Hello and welcome to the Team Conti Sim Performance NASCAR NextGen track guide. This is for Season 2, Week 2, 2025. We are at Martinsville Speedway this week, and this is definitely one of the more difficult tracks on the schedule. Very, very tight quarters. Lots of technical acuity needed to make optimal lap time around here. Heavy braking zones. Hard to get back on throttle without lighting up the rear tires, even in this car, excuse me. So definitely some things to go over in this video, so let's begin. I'm going to go for a 25 to 30 lap run here. It's a little bit shorter than what we would do typically in a race run in practice, but not too much changes over the course of a run. So if you watched the 2024 video, I kind of cut that one short just because it got a little bit mundane. So we'll do the same here if that happens. So at both ends of the track, right off the hop here, we're going to be shifting third to fourth, fourth to third. Very, very easy to hop the rear tires if you don't rev match properly, so make sure you're aware of that. Also very easy to lock up the left front as you transition from the asphalt straightaway to the concrete corner. You might be able to pick up on a little bit of a chirp sound through the video as I go over the transition. Just want to minimize that as much as possible so you don't overheat those fronts. Trying to brake in as straight a line as possible, a lot of peak brake pressure and sustaining that pretty deep into the corner. Trail braking is going to be your friend here. You want to be sure to carry enough speed into the center so you can make good lap time, but not so much that you're overshooting and getting tight and shoving the fronts off in the center and then snapping the rear loose on exit. If you overdrive entry, this thing does have a tendency to sit down in the right front, shift the aero balance forward quickly, and get loose. So if you have that happen, just try to back up your entry speed a little bit. Probably can't see it too much in this point of view, but when I get outside the car later, you'll be able to pick up on it more. I'm going in on the bottom pretty tight to the curb, and I'm sliding up a little bit in the center so I can straighten out my exit. That way I can back some wheel out of it, and it helps me hook the rear tires up better than having a bunch of wheel in it from the center and then trying to smash the gas on exit. It's a very small operating window with this car because of the way it makes downforce, which is important here still, and the small sidewall tires, so any type of slip on exit can really get the car upset quickly. One and two is the more sweeping end of the track. 3 and 4 is the sharper end of the track. So you'll notice that in 3 and 4 your center rolling speed is going to be a little bit slower. You're going to feel like the car has a little bit more of a tendency to want to get off the curbs just because the corner's shaped differently. This is the paper clip, as they call it, and that's why. A little wider entry into 3 that time. Really get that left front as close to the curb as possible by exit. Lots of grip down there, really helps roll and launch. Not a whole lot of tire wear this week, not a whole lot of tire heat, but it does seem like if you buzz the rears early, or if you slide the front early, it does carry throughout the run, and that tenth or two that you start to lose versus the competition is huge with how tight the lap times are. You can see about 11 in here, starting to get a little bit harder to launch up off the corner with lots of throttle, so just need to watch that. And as far as shifting goes, that is a non-negotiable this week. If you do not shift, you will be slow. So you're going to have to figure out how to make shifting work. I know some of you use the shifting driver aids, whether it be the auto clutch or auto blip. I don't love that because it definitely costs lap time, but if you're somebody who's not comfortable shifting and rev matching, do what you got to do to ensure that you can get down to third in the corners here this week. If you try to launch at fourth, you're just hemorrhaging lap time. really good run so far. Nice and smooth. Not going 100%, but pretty close to it. Not really saving tires hard this week like we would at a homestead or a place like that, but just being mindful of the throttle, mindful of the brakes, and mindful of where the wall is. That thing does come up quick. 15 laps in here, about a quarter second off my hot lap. Again, pretty minimal time drop off. There's a few different techniques you'll see this week by other drivers. Some guys are really going to wrap that curb aggressively and never come off of it. They're going to have to really slow their center roll speed to do that. Makes exit a little bit harder too. Some guys are going to charge entry hard like this, slide up in the center, slow that center down, and then get a straight shot up off, especially later in the race as the rubber's laid down. I personally like that technique a little bit better. But as you can see right there, both pretty much yield the same lap time if you know what you're doing. Just going to depend on where your grip is, where the traffic is, things of that sort. If you're in traffic and you're trying to make a move, typically wrapping a curb really tight and sacrificing center speed, which sacrifices exit speed, is not going to make a pass easy. If you go in a little bit harder, slow the center down, cut low on exit, and get that straight shot up off, carry a little bit extra speed, that's going to help you generate momentum so you can get to that person's inside in the next corner. Think of it as a diamond. Small diamond, but still a diamond. Some guys will enter up here. As you can see there, I don't like that. A little loose. Car took the transition kind of funky, so either wrap that curb really hard or just slide up a little bit in the center after entering low. Don't be afraid to turn that wheel in the center too. Lots of wheel lock needed this week. You want to get to your max wheel input to the left when you get to your minimum rolling speed in the center. That's the time to crank that wheel, get the front to bite and turn, and then start unwinding the wheel on exit. A lot of guys, they just don't use enough wheel in the center, and that puts them out of position on exit. Like they're too high, they're tracking out too quickly. Or if they're in position, they have to slow the car down a lot more because they're not actually using the front tires to turn it. So turn the wheel in the center of the corner at Martinsville. Loose right there. That all started from entry. Overdrove entry, put it on the right front, got loose, and never got off of it. So you can see how entry affects the rest of the corner big time. And just that one slide has really upset the rears. So now I'm going to take this lap. Just going to back it down a little bit. I'm not going to try to make a lot of lap time here. Get a little bit of temperature out of the rears. And then go back at it next lap. There we go. Lap right there, back into the high sixes, so that's good. That just goes to show you're not generating a lot of temperature this week, but when you can keep it out of the rears, you want to do it. And if you overheat them, just back it down for a lap or two and you should get it back. Hard into entry there. Definitely feel the rear coming around, but I caught it and didn't overdrive it and made some good lap time. Might be a little harder to get off at 2 because I slid the rears through 3 and 4. Overall, not bad though. Much more compliant, 3 and 4 that time. We'll do one more lap here. Drove it in pretty hard, see if it sticks. Good enough. A really good lap to finish off that 30. Now in the Season 4 video, I did not show a pit road entry for green flag because I said you'd never have one, but I'm going to go ahead and do that here. Coming into turn 3, brake hard, and as you can see, wasn't even close to making it. Let's see, let's try that again. This is fun, right? I bet you didn't think you'd see a car going backwards at Martinsville in this week's track guide, but we're gonna do it. Yeah, like I said in the last video that we did for this track, I've never done a green flag pit road entry here in my 15 years in iRacing, but just in case you have to this week, this is how you do it. Let's try it again here. Coming off the corner, about halfway down the backstretch, just start braking. And there you go. So halfway down the back, start braking, and you can cut these pit stalls here. Just a pet peeve of mine. I hate when people do it because it's just not right. So if you can help it, try to keep it on the right side of pit road. You know, be a good Samaritan, set a good example. But you can cut them if you have to. Just be careful with your pit road speed when you do so. And there we go. So that ends the 30 lap run with a botched pit entry and then a decent pit entry. So we'll get out of the car here, take a look at a few laps from outside, and wrap this up in short order. Quick video this week. Quick laps, quick video. All right. So hot lap 1923 here. And mind you, this is a little bit warmer than what I have in the weather for the baseline stuff in our notes and everything. So if this is a bit slower and you're like, why is he so slow in this run? It's a couple degrees warmer, but still all the same execution and way you drive the car is 1-to-1. Nothing changes there. All right, hot lap here. Down the front stretch, 4th gear. Really going to slow this down. Get past the start finish line and start braking pretty much almost right at the beginning of the NASCAR sign, maybe a car length or so into it. You can see that throttle is going to come out real quick. Heavy, heavy, heavy brake, probably 50% peak brake pressure or thereabout. If you're a subscriber and you are linked to Garage 61, you can see that exact peak brake pressure and how I roll off of it in the data that I provide weekly. So make sure to leverage that if you have it. And if you don't have it, then you should probably think about getting it. It's very helpful. But anywho, so 50% peak brake pressure. You can see this blip of throttle right here. This is my downshift from 4th to 3rd. Very early in the braking zone, so I'm still on the straightaway, wheel relatively straight, and then I can utilize an additional RPM to engine brake more effectively. You don't want to downshift too close to the corner because that's when you're going to be introducing more wheel. And if you have a bunch of wheel in the car and you downshift and you don't get that rev matching exactly right, you're going to hop the rear tires and upset the car in entry. So down into the corner here. And as I had mentioned earlier in the video, this transition from asphalt to concrete, you can kind of see right there, and I'll try to play it through. So you can see, you're going to see the car bounce right there, boom. And when it bounces, it's really susceptible to locking one of the front tires. So just make sure that you are entering the corner in a way that has you fairly straight from the wall to entry, not cranking a bunch of wheel over that transition. You also want to make sure that you're not sustaining too much brake pressure over that transition as well. As you can see, my peak brake pressure is 50%, but by the time I get to that transition, I'm probably at about half of that. If I sustain 50% brake over this transition, I am definitely going to lock a tire. So I have to get some brake out of it, So I don't lock up, but not so much brake that I overshoot the speed that I need to make the center, right? I don't want to get to 0% brake here, start free rolling and fly up the track. So still sustaining a bunch of brake pressure, but trailing off, trailing off, trailing off, and look at that big tuggle wheel right there in the center. So as I'm approaching my minimum rolling speed, which should be somewhere around 67 on this particular lap, I have my max wheel input. And as soon as I start to throttle up, I'm thinking about, okay, how can I start unwinding the wheel? And if I don't unwind the wheel, then I cannot use any more throttle until I do so. If I continue to increase throttle, but do not decrease wheel, I am definitely going to spin out off the corner. So you see I plateau my throttle at about 50, 60%. And you can see that wheel, albeit very slowly, but it is coming back towards center. And there's going to be a moment right about there, that's a big chunk of lock back out of it, and then you can see the throttle increase. So as I decrease wheel, I increase throttle. Wheels decreased again, decrease wheel, decrease a lot of wheel, and then increase throttle. Wheels almost straight, almost off the corner, can probably get to full throttle there. So it's an inverse relationship. The more wheel you have, the less throttle you should have. The less wheel you have, the more throttle you should have. Speaking generally about center to exit. Let's back through here one more time. Get down to that curb, get a little slide up off of it in the center, and then back down and exit that mini diamond, as I called it. Straight off the wall, straight over the transition, to the curb, off the curb, and then straight shot up off. Into turn 3 right here. Braking fairly early. Could probably push this brake zone a little bit more, but this is a safe one, I would say. Still made some good lap time. So braking just before the end of the black NASCAR Premier Partners sign down the backstretch. Pretty much braking right at the Busch logo. All the way off the throttle. Again, peak brake pressure about probably 45-50%. Early downshift right there, as you can see. Downshift there. And similar to turn 1 entry, straight shot. I don't want to sustain my max brake pressure over this transition. As you can see, it's about cut in half. And then I would think the minimum roll speed should be a little bit slower here since it's the tighter end of the track. You can see down to the curb on entry, carrying brake, away from the curb. You can see how that curb really jolts back in right there. And then, yeah, about a mile an hour slower. But you can see how that curb is it's not a smooth round corner. Like on entry right here, it's out, and then it cuts back in on exit. So you have to be ready to utilize that cut in on exit so you can straighten out your approach off the corner. Really slow it down here. Pretty parallel to the curb, now coming off of it a bit. And you can see right here, that's probably the farthest away I am from the curb. The curb straightens out here, and then from here on out, the curb is cutting back to the left. And I'm going to make sure I get back down to that curb so I can utilize that extra track space to straighten out my exit. And again, just looking at the wheel, max wheel input, off the max wheel, throttle increases, wheel comes out, throttle increases, wheel comes out, full throttle. So one more time at speed here. Brake at the bush, down to third, get low, run about parallel, then cut in on exit. That's on a hot lap. It's a 1920. Let's see what a 1964 looks like at the end of this run here. Braking a little bit deeper later in the run, which makes sense because the first couple laps your tire pressures are low, your brakes are cold, your braking and tire grip is typically not the best. So later in the run, even though you're limited on rear grip on exit, you possibly could push that brake zone harder than early. But this was me getting after it the last lap too. But either way, you know that the window with which you want to be lifting is somewhere in this black Premier Partners sign, probably more so between the NASCAR and the Geico. So into one here, heavy brake, down to third. Sliding up in the center, a little bit more than the hot lap, which makes sense because you're just grip limited. A fairly similar way that I get back on the throttle and exit into 3. Yeah, a little deeper into 3 like I'd thought, just past that sign. I thought that early lap was a bit tentative, and it was. Down into 3, watch the transition, make sure not to overdrive so that you don't get loose. Off the corner, and yeah, fairly similar. Now if I go back to, I think this lap I got pretty loose somewhere, let's see. Maybe 3 and 4. Yeah, a little loose right there off 2. Very right rear limited. As I go to roll through here, no, it was pretty good. Right there off the corner, yeah. So you can see off 2 I was rear limited, off 4 I was rear limited. And then this lap I ran a 1980. Just really backed it down and exit to try to get the rears back under me. And the next lap, we'll get after it. Rears are in better shape now. Down into 3. Good grip. Wrap that curb really tightly right there. And good. Some good laps right there. Alright, so this is probably the botched pit road first. So let's watch that in full speed so we can see my failure. Not even close. Need to be 35 at the line. I was 66. So that's not going to work. Alright, so we say, okay, you know, this is a practice session. We can do as we wish here. Black flags are not in play, luckily. Re-rack and try it again. And start braking before the Premier Partners banner on the wall to make your pit road entry under green. There you go. Made it. Like I said, you can cut this. I encourage you not to. Be the good person. Be the fair person. Run pit road as it was intended to be run. If others around you are cutting, then you really have no choice. But if you're leading and you set the example, maybe others will follow. But other than that, that is Martinsville in a nutshell. Probably very similar to what we talked about in my season 4 video, but figured I would refresh this one just because I think there are a few different things versus last time we were here with just how you're driving, brake pressure, lift points, things of that sort. So hopefully this helps. Otherwise, that is it. Have a great week 2 at Martinsville. Keep the fenders on it. Keep it clean. Keep it up front. Get yourself some good finishes, and we'll see you next time.